What if everything you've been told about death is a carefully constructed lie? What if, in those first critical moments after your soul departs your physical vessel, you face a decision so crucial that making the wrong choice could imprison you for countless lifetimes? Helena Blavatsky, the enigmatic founder of Theosophy and one of history's most controversial spiritual revolutionaries, uncovered a terrifying truth about death that religious authorities have desperately tried to conceal for millennia. A truth so powerful that those who understood it gained mastery over the very cycle of death and rebirth, while those who remained ignorant became trapped in an endless loop of suffering. I'm about to share with you Helena Blavatsky Reveals, the terrifying mistake souls make right after leaving the body. This isn't just another spiritual theory or comforting bedtime story about the afterlife. This is the raw, unfiltered wisdom that Blavatsky extracted from ancient mystery schools, Eastern esoteric traditions, and her own profound mystical experiences. The knowledge I'm about to reveal was once reserved exclusively for initiated adepts who had proven their worthiness through years of spiritual discipline. Today, this wisdom comes to you freely, but with a warning. Once you understand the critical error most souls make in that twilight moment between life and death, you'll never see your existence the same way again. You're standing at the threshold of forbidden knowledge. Knowledge that religious institutions, governments, and power structures throughout history have systematically suppressed because it liberates humanity from fear-based control. Knowledge that transfers the power over your eternal journey back where it belongs, with you. Are you prepared to see beyond the veil? To understand what truly happens in those first moments after your final heartbeat? To learn how to avoid the trap that has ensnared countless souls throughout human history? If you're feeling that peculiar mixture of fascination and apprehension right now, you're responding exactly as you should. Truth of this magnitude should unsettle before it liberates. If you're finding value in these revelations already, please subscribe to this channel and leave a like, because it helps me continue bringing this hidden knowledge to those ready to receive it. Now, let us begin our descent into the mystery that awaits us all. To understand the critical mistake souls make after death, we must first comprehend what death actually is, not as modern science defines it, not as religious dogma portrays it, but as ancient wisdom traditions have always known it to be. Death is not an ending, but a transition, not oblivion, but transformation, not a punishment, but a doorway. Helena Blavatsky spent decades studying esoteric traditions across the globe, from the snow-capped Himalayas to the hidden temples of Egypt. She immersed herself in teachings that predated Christianity, Buddhism, and even the earliest Egyptian dynasties. What she discovered was a remarkably consistent understanding of death across seemingly unconnected civilizations. According to Blavatsky's revelations in The Secret Doctrine and Isis Unveiled, what we call death is merely the separation of our consciousness from its physical vehicle. The body, which most identify as self, is in reality just the most temporary and dense of our many layers of existence. When the silver cord connecting these layers finally severs, we don't cease to exist. We simply shift our awareness to a different plane of reality. This transition occurs in stages, not instantaneously. There is a liminal period immediately following physical death where the soul hovers between dimensions, still partially connected to the physical world, yet increasingly aware of the astral plane. This in-between state is what the Tibetans call bardo, what ancient Greeks named metempsychosis, and what modern near-death experiencers describe as the tunnel or threshold experience. It is in this twilight state, this cosmic waiting room, that the critical mistake occurs. A mistake born not of wickedness but of ignorance. A mistake so common that Blavatsky estimated more than 90% of souls fall into this trap, delaying their spiritual evolution for lifetimes. The mistake seems so natural, so understandable, that souls make it without realizing they've chosen a path of extended suffering. It's a mistake born of attachment, of misidentification, of the very human tendency to cling to what we know rather than surrender to the unknown. Blavatsky discovered that this error isn't punished by some external deity or cosmic judge. Rather, it's a self-imposed limitation, a choice made in a moment of cosmic confusion that creates its own karmic consequences. The universe doesn't condemn, It simply responds to our choices with mathematical precision. The veil between worlds isn't merely a poetic metaphor, it's an actual energetic boundary that the departing consciousness must navigate. Those who have prepared properly during life can pierce this veil with awareness and intent. Those who haven't prepared find themselves caught in its gossamer threads, struggling against currents they don't understand, making decisions from a place of fear rather than wisdom. In the theosophical understanding, death is not something that happens to us, but something we do. It is an active process of transitioning consciousness, not a passive experience of cessation. And like any skill, it can be performed with mastery or with terrible incompetence. The difference between these outcomes isn't luck or divine favor. It's knowledge. Specific knowledge about what to expect and how to respond in those critical moments after physical consciousness fades. I wonder, as I share these profound insights with you now, from which corner of America you're watching this revelation unfold. Perhaps you're in the bustling energy of New York, the spiritual deserts of Arizona, or the misty coasts of Oregon, or perhaps this knowledge is reaching you from across oceans and continents. Wherever you are, I invite you to share in the comments below. From which city in the United States or which country around the world are you receiving these ancient truths? I'm genuinely curious to know how far Blavatsky's suppressed wisdom is spreading. Now we arrive at the heart of Blavatsky's revelation, the precise nature of the mistake that ensnares so many souls in their post-mortem journey. In those first moments after death, as your consciousness separates from your physical form, you experience a profound sensory expansion. Colors become more vivid than anything the physical eyes could perceive. Sounds manifest as visible vibrations. Thoughts take form as living entities. The barriers between you and the universe begin to dissolve. In this state of heightened awareness, something remarkable happens. You encounter what Blavatsky called the astral light, the luminous record of all that has ever been thought, said, or done. This is the true book of life, the Akashic records, containing the energetic imprints of your entire existence, not just this lifetime, but all previous incarnations as well. And here lies the fatal attraction. As you gaze into this cosmic memory, you see scenes from the life you just departed, your children's faces, your greatest achievements, your deepest regrets. You witness moments of love, of triumph, of connection. These images radiate with an intensity that seems to pull you toward them. They feel familiar, safe, known. Simultaneously, you begin to perceive another light, what Eastern traditions call the clear light of reality. This luminosity has a different quality entirely. It doesn't draw from the familiar past, but opens toward an unexperienced future. It doesn't remind you of who you were, but calls you toward what you might become. It doesn't comfort with the known, but beckons toward ultimate liberation. The mistake, as Blavatsky revealed through her studies of ancient Tibetan and Egyptian death rituals, is that most souls turn away from the clear light and toward the comforting familiarity of the astral reflections. They choose the echo of their past rather than the potential of their future. They reach backward rather than forward. This choice seems rational in the moment. After all, the astral reflections contain everything and everyone you've ever loved. They reflect the identity you've spent a lifetime constructing. They offer the illusion of continuity when everything else seems to be dissolving. But this backward gaze, this Orphic turn toward what must be released, creates the energetic pattern that pulls the soul back into physical incarnation, often before it has fully assimilated the lessons of its previous lifetime. It's a cosmic short-circuit that interrupts the natural progression of consciousness evolution. Blavatsky described this moment as a fork in the road of eternity. One path leads to temporary comfort, but extended entrapment in the cycle of rebirth. The other leads through momentary surrender into expanded consciousness and eventual liberation. The tragedy is that no one tells us this while we're alive. No one prepares us for this critical choice point. We enter the afterlife experience as spiritual infants, making the most consequential decision of our eternal journey without preparation or guidance. Can you feel the weight of this truth? Can you sense how it might change everything about how you view your current existence? This isn't abstract philosophy. It's practical knowledge about the most universal human experience, one we will all face. The ancient Egyptians understood this so well that they dedicated their entire civilization to preparing for this moment. The pyramids, the Book of the Dead, the elaborate mummification rituals, all were technologies designed to help the soul navigate past this fatal attraction and toward true liberation. If these revelations are resonating with something deep within you, something that recognizes truth beyond intellectual understanding, please share this video with others who might benefit from this knowledge. And comment below with your thoughts. I'm eager to hear your perspective on this cosmic crossroads we all must eventually face. In our next chapter, we'll explore exactly what happens to souls who make this mistake. The consequences are far more profound than most spiritual traditions dare to acknowledge. What happens to the soul that turns toward the astral reflections rather than the clear light? This is where Blavatsky's revelations become truly unsettling. According to theosophical teachings, the soul that chooses familiarity over liberation doesn't simply reincarnate immediately. Instead, it enters what Blavatsky called kama loka, a plane of desire and unresolved attachment. In this intermediate realm, the soul constructs what modern spiritual teachers might call a phantom self, a reflection of the personality that has died, composed entirely of unresolved desires, attachments, and identifications. This phantom self isn't evil or condemned. It's simply confused, believing itself to still be the person who died, unaware that it's now operating in a completely different dimensional reality with different laws and different possibilities. Imagine waking up tomorrow still believing you're in today, still reaching for your coffee cup on a table that no longer exists, still expecting responses from people who can't hear you. This cosmic disorientation is the plight of the phantom self, a consciousness locked in patterns that no longer serve its evolution. In this state, the soul experiences a peculiar kind of suffering, not the suffering of physical pain, but the suffering of unfulfillable desire. It reaches for connections it can no longer make. It hungers for experiences it can no longer have. It clings to an identity that has already dissolved. This suffering isn't punitive. The universe isn't punishing the soul for making the wrong choice. Rather, it's the natural consequence of attempting to maintain a form of consciousness that has outlived its vehicle and environment. The phantom self eventually exhausts itself. The energies of attachment gradually dissipate as the soul recognizes the futility of its grasping. This process might take what we would experience as days, or it might take centuries. Time operates differently on the astral plane, expanding and contracting according to the intensity of consciousness rather than the mechanical ticking of clocks. When the attachments have finally dissolved, the soul is drawn toward rebirth, pulled by the very patterns of desire it failed to release. It incarnates not randomly but precisely, entering circumstances that reflect its own unresolved karmic patterns, its own unlearned lessons, its own unfulfilled yearnings. This is why, Blavatsky explained, so many humans feel a persistent sense of having unfinished business, because we do. We carry forward the emotional and spiritual incomplete equations from previous lifetimes, drawn back to similar circumstances until we finally resolve them through awareness rather than repetition. The phantom self isn't a theological concept of punishment. It's a practical description of what happens when consciousness becomes identified with temporary forms and relationships. It's the natural outcome of the mistake so many souls make, choosing familiarity over freedom, comfort over evolution, the known past over the unknown potential. This understanding transforms death from a mysterious endpoint into a navigable transition. It places responsibility for our eternal journey squarely in our hands. It reveals that we aren't judged by external forces, but shaped by our own choices, our own levels of awareness, our own capacity to release attachment when the moment of transition arrives. Now we arrive at the profound contrast that lies at the heart of Blavatsky's teachings, the stark difference between the path of attachment and the path of liberation, between the soul that turns toward the astral reflections and the soul that surrenders to the clear light. Those rare individuals who have prepared properly during life, who have practiced the art of conscious dying as taught in mystery schools throughout the ages, experience death entirely differently from the majority of humanity. When they encounter that critical choice point between the familiar reflections of their past and the expansive potential of the clear light, they recognize the moment for what it is. They understand that the comforting images of their past life are merely reflections in the cosmic mirror, not the reality to which they should cling, but echoes they must compassionately release. Instead of turning toward these reflections, they direct their consciousness toward the clear light, surrendering their constructed identity, their accumulated attachments, their very sense of separate self. This surrender isn't a loss, but a cosmic homecoming, a return to the universal consciousness from which individual awareness temporarily emerged. In this surrender, something miraculous happens. Rather than constructing a phantom self composed of unfulfilled desires, the liberated soul experiences what Tibetan Buddhists call the luminous bardo of dharmata, a state of pure potential where consciousness is unfiltered by personal identity. In this state, the soul isn't bound by its past karmic patterns, but free to evolve according to its highest spiritual potential. This is the light opposed to shadow, truth opposed to illusion, freedom opposed to bondage, not in a moralistic sense of right versus wrong, but in the practical reality of which path leads to continued suffering and which leads to liberation. Blavatsky's revelation shatters our conventional understanding of the afterlife. There is no external judgment, no weighing of souls, no divine reward or punishment. There is only the natural consequence of our own level of awareness, our own capacity to release attachment, our own preparation for the moment of transition. The cosmic mirror doesn't judge what it reflects, it simply reveals what is. And what it reveals in that critical moment after death is the true nature of our consciousness, either attached and grasping or aware and surrendered. This understanding transforms death from something that happens to us into something we consciously navigate. It places the responsibility for our eternal journey where it has always belonged, not with external deities or cosmic forces, but with our own level of awareness. The contrast couldn't be more stark: phantom self or liberated consciousness, continued entrapment in the cycle of attachment and rebirth, or evolution toward cosmic awareness, the familiar prison of our constructed identity, or the unfamiliar freedom of our essential nature. This knowledge has been systematically suppressed throughout human history precisely because it is so empowering. It removes the need for intermediaries between humanity and truth. It renders obsolete any religious system based on fear of divine punishment or hope of divine reward. If you're finding these revelations illuminating and mind-expanding, please subscribe to this channel now to ensure you don't miss the continuing chapters of this cosmic journey. Your subscription helps spread this transformative wisdom to others who are ready to receive it. Beneath the veiled language of religious texts and behind the sealed doors of mystery schools lies a secret that Blavatsky worked tirelessly to bring into the light. There exists a specific practice, a methodology, a technology of consciousness designed specifically to prepare the soul for that critical moment after death. This hidden practice isn't prayer as commonly understood. It isn't moral virtue as conventionally taught. It isn't devotion to external deities or adherence to religious laws. It is a precise psychological training that dismantles the very mechanism that creates the fatal mistake we've been exploring. In her most esoteric writings, Blavatsky described this practice as dying before you die, a conscious rehearsal of the death process undertaken while still in physical form. This practice has been given many names across traditions. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's called phowa, or consciousness transference. In certain Sufi orders, it's known as the little death. In Hermetic traditions, it's termed the alchemical separation. At its core, this practice involves learning to systematically release attachment to everything that isn't your essential nature, not by rejecting the world, but by recognizing it as temporary, fluid, and ultimately not self. The practitioner learns to witness the arising and passing of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and identities without becoming entangled in them. They practice dying to their constructed self many times each day. Think of it as a cosmic rehearsal. Just as an actor rehearses their lines before opening night, the wise soul rehearses the art of surrender before the final curtain falls on physical existence. This rehearsal creates neural and energetic pathways that remain accessible even when the physical brain is shutting down. It establishes patterns of release that become available at the critical moment of transition. The practice often begins with focused meditation on the impermanence of all phenomena. The practitioner contemplates deeply. What remains when everything temporal is stripped away? What persists when memories fade, when relationships end, when the body itself deteriorates? This contemplation isn't morbid, it's liberating. It reveals the luminous awareness that witnesses all change without itself changing. As the practice deepens, the individual experiences brief tastes of the non-dual consciousness that awaits beyond the veil of death. These glimpses create a familiarity with the unfamiliar territory of pure awareness, making it less likely that the soul will turn away in fear when it encounters the clear light. Here's the most closely guarded secret. This practice culminates in a precise visualization of the death process itself. The practitioner visualizes their consciousness separating from the physical form, encountering the choice point between reflection and liberation, and consciously choosing the path of surrender to the clear light. This visualization, repeated countless times during life, creates a template that the dying consciousness naturally follows. There's an ancient saying, "In death, we become what we have practiced becoming in life." If we've practiced attachment and identification, we'll experience the phantom self. If we've practiced awareness and release, we'll experience liberation. But I must warn you, this practice contains a hidden danger for the unprepared, a crucial element that, if misunderstood, could leave you more entangled rather than free. In our next chapter, I'll reveal what the ancient adepts knew about this double-edged sword of spiritual preparation. Like this video now if you're ready to learn this transformative practice, as your engagement helps spread this vital knowledge to those who seek it. Let's bring Blavatsky's cosmic revelation down to earth and examine how it manifests in our modern world. The terrifying mistake souls make after death isn't merely a metaphysical concern for mystics and monks, it's painfully visible in how we live our daily lives right now. Look around at our contemporary society. We are a culture obsessed with permanence in an impermanent universe. We desperately grasp for security through wealth accumulation, desperately seek immortality through fame and legacy, desperately fight the natural process of aging. We treat death as the ultimate failure rather than a natural transition. We medicate away the awareness of mortality and suppress the grieving process when it touches our lives. These aren't just psychological quirks or cultural trends. According to Blavatsky's understanding, they are the earthly reflections of the same mistake souls make after death, the mistake of clinging to the familiar rather than surrendering to transformation. The modern medical establishment often treats death as a technical problem to be solved, rather than a sacred transition to be honored. Families make desperate decisions to extend biological functions long after quality of life has faded. The dying are surrounded by beeping machines, instead of wisdom keepers who could guide the transitioning consciousness. Our legal and financial systems are constructed around the accumulation and transfer of wealth and property, reinforcing the illusion that we can somehow maintain control beyond our physical existence. We create elaborate estate plans and dynastic trusts, attempting to extend our will beyond the grave. Social media has created a new form of phantom self, digital identities that persist after biological death, frozen reflections of who we once were. These digital ghosts remain unchanged, while the souls that created them have moved on, creating a strange new form of attachment to outdated self-images. Even our entertainment continuously reinforces the fear of death rather than wisdom about transition. Zombies, vampires, ghosts. Our popular culture is filled with images of souls trapped in dysfunctional afterlife states, unable to release their attachment to physical existence. Blavatsky would see all of these modern phenomena as symptoms of the same spiritual ignorance, our collective failure to understand and prepare for the reality of death. She would recognize our frantic clinging to youth, health, wealth, and identity as rehearsals for the fatal mistake so many souls make at the moment of transition. This ignorance isn't accidental. It's the predictable outcome of centuries of suppression of death wisdom, the systematic dismantling of traditional practices that once prepared souls for conscious transition, the replacement of spiritual technology with materialist dogma that recognizes no existence beyond the physical. Now we stand at a crossroads, both collectively and individually. The wisdom Blavatsky worked to preserve offers us a fundamental choice about how we approach the inevitable transition awaiting us all. Will we continue to live in denial of death, accumulating attachments that will bind us to the wheel of unconscious rebirth? Or will we reclaim the ancient practices that prepare consciousness for liberation? This choice isn't abstract philosophy, it's intensely practical. It affects how you'll experience the most significant transition of your existence. It determines whether you'll navigate death with confusion and fear or with awareness and grace. The path of attachment is familiar and requires no special effort. Simply continue as you are, identifying with your body, your possessions, your relationships, your achievements. Continue believing that you are your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, your aversions. Continue accumulating experiences without understanding their transient nature. This path leads naturally to the phantom self and the continuation of unconscious rebirth. The path of liberation requires conscious effort and practical training. It involves systematically learning to recognize what in you is eternal and what is temporary. It demands regular practice in releasing attachment without abandoning engagement. It requires developing familiarity with states of consciousness beyond ordinary waking awareness. This path leads toward recognition of the clear light and the possibility of evolution beyond the cycle of unconscious rebirth. Both paths are available to you in this moment. Both are legitimate choices with predictable consequences. Neither is externally judged as right or wrong. Each simply leads to different experiences after the veil of death parts. Blavatsky wasn't concerned with converting people to a particular religious view. Her work focused on preserving practical knowledge about consciousness navigation, knowledge that benefits all humans regardless of their theological beliefs. She understood that souls don't need the right beliefs to navigate death skillfully. They need practical training in the mechanics of consciousness transition. The choice before you isn't whether to accept or reject a particular metaphysical framework. It's whether to begin practical preparation for the transition that inevitably awaits, or to continue accumulating attachments that will bind consciousness in the moment of release. This is a deeply personal decision that each soul must make individually. There is no universal prescription, no one-size-fits-all answer. The only question that matters is, which path resonates with your deepest intuition about the nature of existence? And you, viewing this now, which path would you choose? The familiar road of attachment or the challenging path of liberation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested in your perspective on this profound question. We've journeyed through the labyrinth of Blavatsky's revelations, but we've yet to confront the most closely guarded secret, the specific practice that prepares the soul for its final transition. Not the philosophical framework, not the theoretical understanding, but the actual methodology of conscious dying. This practice has been transmitted from teacher to student for millennia, often encoded in symbolic language to protect it from distortion. Blavatsky herself was careful about how explicitly she described it, knowing that premature exposure to certain techniques could create more confusion than clarity. The practice begins with a radical reorientation of awareness. Rather than identifying with the content of consciousness, thoughts, emotions, sensations, memories, the practitioner learns to identify with consciousness itself, not what you are aware of, but the awareness that perceives. This shift isn't achieved through belief or intellectual understanding alone. It requires systematic training in what Blavatsky called the withdrawal of the senses, a process of progressively detaching awareness from external stimuli and redirecting it toward its own nature. The practice intensifies as the practitioner learns to recognize and release the 5 primary attachments that bind consciousness to the wheel of rebirth: attachment to physical form, attachment to sensation, attachment to perception, attachment to mental formations, and attachment to ordinary consciousness itself. Each attachment is systematically observed, understood, and consciously released. As these attachments loosen, something extraordinary begins to happen. The practitioner occasionally experiences brief glimpses of what Tibetans call rigpa, pure, unbounded awareness that exists prior to all mental constructs. These glimpses create familiarity with the clear light that will be encountered at the moment of death. The final stage of the practice involves precise visualization of the death process itself. The practitioner visualizes their consciousness separating from the physical body, encountering the cosmic mirror of their past lives, recognizing its nature as reflection rather than reality, and consciously surrendering to the clear light. This isn't morbid fantasy, but practical training, creating neural and energetic pathways that will remain accessible even as the physical brain shuts down. It's analogous to a pilot practicing emergency procedures in a simulator, creating automatic responses that will function even under extreme conditions. But here we encounter the ultimate obstacle, the final veil that prevents most people from undertaking this practice seriously, the ego's terror of its own dissolution. The constructed self recognizes this practice as a threat to its continued existence and creates sophisticated avoidance strategies, from intellectual skepticism to spiritual bypassing to simple procrastination. This is the confrontation each seeker must face: the fear of letting go completely, the terror of surrendering the known for the unknown, the resistance to dying before death. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, someone ready to look beyond the final veil. We've traveled far together, exploring the cosmic revelation that Blavatsky worked to preserve, the knowledge of the soul's critical choice point after death, and the practice that prepares consciousness for liberation rather than continued attachment. This knowledge doesn't belong to any single tradition or teacher. It's the universal heritage of humanity, preserved in various forms across cultures and epochs. From the Egyptian Book of the Dead to the Tibetan Bardo Thodol, from Greek mystery schools to Sufi orders, the essence of this teaching has been transmitted to those prepared to receive it. The terrifying mistake souls make after death isn't punished by external forces. It's simply the natural consequence of unprepared consciousness encountering cosmic reality. The mistake isn't moral but practical, like trying to swim without having learned the movements, or trying to fly a plane without understanding the controls. The good news is that this mistake isn't inevitable. It can be avoided through proper preparation during life. The practice of dying before you die creates the conditions for conscious transition when physical death finally arrives. It transforms death from a fearful unknown into a familiar doorway. This preparation doesn't require withdrawal from life or ascetic renunciation. It's fully compatible with engaged, passionate living. In fact, those who have glimpsed the eternal often experience temporal existence more vividly, more gratefully, more compassionately, knowing that each experience is precious precisely because it's transient. Blavatsky's revelation isn't meant to inspire fear, but to awaken us from unconscious patterns that lead to unnecessary suffering. It's an invitation to reclaim the wisdom about death that was systematically suppressed as materialist worldviews gained dominance. The choice is now yours. Will you begin the practice of conscious dying while still vibrantly alive? Will you prepare for the most significant transition of your existence with awareness and intention? Or will you continue accumulating attachments that will bind consciousness in the moment of release? If you've journeyed with me to this point, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share in the comments what aspect of this exploration most deeply resonated with you. Your engagement helps bring this transformative wisdom to others who seek it.